Hello, my name is Yudao. I am a monk here at SokukoJi. If you are inspired by these talks and these teachings, please consider joining us for our other forums, online or in person, and also consider helping us financially. We could use your support if you are able. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I've been asked to pick a line in Hokkyo Zanmai and to speak about it by Sokuzan. And my name is Myoka, and I have picked from the Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, which is our translation of the Hokkyo Zanmai, which is a chant that we chant during our morning service at least 6 months out of the year. And the line I chose is, the meaning is not in the words, yet it responds to the inquiring impulse. The meaning is not in the words, yet it responds to the inquiring impulse. And I also looked up another translation from Upaya Zen Center online. The meaning does not reside in the words, but a pivotal moment brings it forth. The meaning does not reside in the words, but a pivotal moment brings it forth. And then the version that we chant by Red Pine is, the meaning is not in the words, yet it responds to the inquiring impulse. And what I reacted to, or what came up for me in that, was questions and questioning, and how teachers, our teachers, Sokuzan, but also teachers throughout all of the lineage, at least Dogen and any teachers that we study, seem to respond to questions. And so I started thinking about questions and how that could be seen as one kind of responding to an inquiring impulse. So the inquiring impulse shows up in a question, and this happens in practice, and we're asked to formulate, or not formulate, but to bring questions to the teacher, to the Sangha, to book study. And so over and over again, there is an inquiring impulse. And perhaps that inquiring impulse is what brought us to the path, or brought us to want to train our minds or look at these teachings. And in setting up or having a question, it looks like that we do or can have a tendency to set up what we're bringing to the teacher, words and backgrounds, and when something was said, how it was said, who said it, and then we ask the question. When it looks like in the teaching of thusness, which is my understanding of what the Hokkyo Zanmai is about, it's about responding to an inquiring impulse. And so I think as we are on the path and bring questions to the teacher, we might look at how much elaboration we bring to the question and close it down or narrow what we're asking in such a way, and almost perhaps even trapping the answer in certain boundaries that we've set up ahead of time. And so if we've read about a concept that we want to understand, like emptiness, we might start by inquiring, what is emptiness? And perhaps in this way, we might set up a kind of dance in our question asking between the teacher and ourselves, rather than saying, this is the context, this is where I heard it, you said this, and I said that, and that there may be a time and place, and that may show up also in questions, but it seems like we can look at a question, and this also, I'm looking at this kind of out of also hearing Sokuzan often say, what do you want to know? After someone, especially, or myself included, has spewed out a number of words, contexts, what we think about what we're asking, and don't necessarily ask what we want to know. Now, in presenting all that out of an inquiring impulse, I think we're also just strongly encouraged to bring forth our questions. And if we do elaborate, or the way we present a question, we can look at that. We're not asked to change that necessarily. I think in bringing forth questions, I can see my own mind wanting to have some kind of answer ahead of time before I ask the question, and perhaps even present it as a statement, intending it to be a question, when really I just want affirmation to what I'm saying, rather than actually looking at what it is I want to know. The meaning is not in the words, yet it responds to the inquiring impulse. So what is that inquiring impulse, that initial spark? Or if we've read something in book study, or one of the other, in another book that we're studying on our own, and there's a specific inquiry, it can be helpful to write that down and have a specific idea around it. But perhaps we could also take it to the cushion and ask ourselves in a way that would encourage us to further look into what it is we want to know about that particular sentence or concept. And then if we do narrow it down into what, we're pretty sure we know what it's all about, or have an idea about that, just look at how we do that, how we might lock down on a specific meaning or a specific teacher's definition or explanation of that, and then look at how we might respond to that out of impulse. And also look at other teachers or other standard definitions of what that is. It's difficult because we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to see how we do want to elaborate and have the answer and know what the response might be. But that's part of the teaching. responding to an inquiring impulse, we are responding. And if we're coming up with a question, we're producing, and we need words. But this Hokkyo Zanmai is saying the meaning is not in the words, but we have to use words to point. And the teachers before us have all used words to point at what this is. I think I'll take questions at this point. Kandroma.
Drama bowing. It seems like you're delineating or finding a difference between asking a question about concepts and asking a question about what you really want to know. What is the difference for you, bowing?
I think some questions are more conceptual, but I'm not sure of the difference. And I guess the question is, how do we use the concepts in a way that doesn't trap us into what we think? And how do we bring more awareness to even a conceptual question and see that it is narrow or wide or anything beyond what we're asking?
Drama bowing. Is there such a thing as a good question?
No. And I say that because I don't know what that would be, if there would be a good or bad. If we preconceive whether it's good or bad, we may or may not ask it, or we may be disappointed at the response. If we think it's a good question, it seems like there's no way to know. Our teacher encourages us to ask regardless.
Drama bowing, when it says inquiring impulse, is it suggesting that we just ask whatever shows up, ask whatever question that shows up, bowing?
The response may not be asking a question. It says respond to the inquiring impulse, and we may see how we don't respond or can't respond, or that there is, if there's, the response may be no response, or no asking a question.
Chokodabang, is it a bad idea to ask a big convoluted question and have the teacher bark at me to what I want to know and feel embarrassed, and can that still be helpful?
Very much so. It feels like that may be part of the question and response you have with the teacher around it could be, any that could show up anyway. Seems very situational. If we ask a broad question, the response may be asking for more information or the context, and I'm looking at that it may be a situation where we may want to look at that elaborate question to see if we need to ask all of that. But that may not happen. We may just ask the whole convoluted thing and may be very helpful to see that. James?
James Darwin. So a slave needs to be free before they can have an understanding of freedom. Without that, they'll ask you, when's the next time to pick cotton? Darwin. Yeah.
James, did you have a question?
Yeah. How do you explain that first freedom has to be experienced before a question can be formed?
I'm not certain I'm following what you're asking about.
Okay. A question formed without awareness is limited because of that. How do you explain that the question is ill-formed because the person's not ready?
The question can't be ill-formed. I'm just suggesting that as we look at our questions, we may want to consider how we're asking the question, but that may not show up. It may be that there's just some situation where we just need to ask the question, or we may not realize. I'm sure I've asked numerous questions where I was elaborating and going on and not getting to what I wanted to know and maybe not knowing what I wanted to know. And I'm just saying to consider that.
Uh, Ms. Bowen, I was reading the Yoga Chara book that we had recently, and they said that an ill-formed question was like, who created the universe? It's ill-formed because there is no who. Is ill-formed different here than that? Bowen?
I don't know what he's reading.
Do you know
Uh,
what one you're reading?
that green Yoga Chara book, Mind Only, or from the book study.
And what was your question again about ill-formed?
It said the analogy of a river. Who created the river is ill-formed because there is no who.
What was your last word? Did you say who?
Yeah, it said the question, who created the river is ill. There is no who.
I'm not sure. I understand.
It says the analogy of the question, the analogy of the river, like the question is ill-formed because there is no who. It just says like in the book, the question is ill-formed because there is no who to ask the question or something. It's just saying like, it's saying in the book that there is an ill-formed question.
So what is this question? What about that? So now we're clear on what.
Yeah, what is your question about that, James?
The question starts off in the wrong foot, how do you kind of get onto the right foot with asking a question?
The question that's asked is the right question. I'm gonna move on to Olam.
Oh, I can't even do that. They're wrong bowing. Could it be said the other way too, like the meaning's not in the words of the question? Or the inquiry bowing?
Yes. And I think that the part that brings that out to me is impulse. I mean, even the question itself, impulse, the response, impulse. And impulse to me is not quite the right word. And I do like the analogy of a dance where something is said and there's a response. Something is said and there's a question and a response. And yeah, all of our teachers that we read regularly seem to have that format, whether it's, well, both of Sokuzan's teachers, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and our Zen master Kobun Chino Roshi, both have used that format. And then even when we read ancient teachers' writings, there seems to be that question and answer situation happening. Chokadawa.
Chocolate bowing. I already know everything, so how can you help me? You have a lot of experience asking questions, and I'm being silly, but I am kind of a know-it-all as far as pride and stuff like that. So asking questions can be difficult. Do you have advice for people who kind of fall into that basket? Where do questions come from for you?
I feel like I I entered the path with some know-it-allness, and it's still with me. And I think you can't force, or you can, I guess, force yourself to ask a question, but it may be important just to look at that whole setup and that whole situation of what that is and take it, sit down, hold still, look at the wall, and see how that shows up. I can't give some kind of formula for asking questions. Perhaps in some of what I've said, it sounds like that, but I'm endeavoring to encourage us to consider our questions. And that may mean asking questions that we're not sure about, whether that, falls into some kind of appropriate question or not. So it seems more important just to ask the question. And as we practice, consider how those show up. So it's not.
So if there's what is it, ill-considered question, was that it, or inappropriate or ill-formed question, and the teacher responds with to that ill-formed, will that response be automatically ill-formed, or would it be a direct teaching?
Direct
I'll give you a
teaching.
couple more ors if that isn't enough. You can roll right away from here. Do you remember what I said?
It looks like a direct teaching.
Okay. So why don't you ask me that question?
No,
I said, why don't you ask me that question? I didn't ask you to ask me that. I said, why don't you ask me that question? That's a question.
Ego.
Migo?
Ego.
Ego. Go ahead and ask me. Let me take a stab at it.
If the student asks an ill-formed question, will the teacher's response be ill-formed?
That's not the question I want you to ask me. I want you to ask me the question that, what's his name?
James.
James had, yeah. Ask him that he was questioning about something he had read in Professor Waldron's book that Elena elaborated on somewhat. So ask me that question.
If the student is asking an ill-formed ask, I haven't read it,
Ask me the
so
question about the river. I just
Oh.
wanted to bit over it.
I don't remember it.
Who made the river? You know, let's see if he knows. I'll respond to his question.
Okay, go ahead, James.
Who
So,
made the river if there's no who defined?
who made the river if there's no who defined?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, I can respond to that. That's the first response.
it was on Park.
Did Sokukoji bark?
Park.
No.
No, I'm about to respond.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Give me a minute. There never was a river. It's an illusion. Never was. That was never the case. That is unreal. You want the other response, James?
I do, but you mind we throw you in the river after this?
Mind explaining the river? The illusion of wet, the illusion of movement, the illusion of flowing, the illusion of you're observing it, the illusion of that it's being observed, illusion, 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 unreal. Find out what's real. Find out for yourself. Everyone should find out so you don't ever have another question. Though you may ask a few, you already know what they are, what the answer is, just like Chogadao was saying. It's called Vajra pride. Something that is not explained very well. Pardon me for stepping into your teaching situation.
Thank you for your teaching.
Thank you for teaching your own self.
I got a question. How do you differentiate a not teaching?
Did you say, how do you differentiate a not teaching?
Yeah, there has to be something that's not a teaching.
He's a perfect
Not
great man.
teaching. Not teaching is not a teaching. Zen. And that's spelled with a K.
Yeah.
Do you like knots? I like to tie knots.
Untying them's fun. Make chain knots.
Are there further questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
are all questions, do all questions come from the illusion, bowing?
Yes. Or no. Maybe. Uh, where is that question coming from? Maybe you could say some more about that.
Deb bowing. In the previous conversation, something came up, I believe Sokusan might have responded with, it's all an illusion, which I guess led me to think that are all questions just part of the illusion? We're forming words, we're forming concepts, forming to find out what we can find out. Is it all just part of the illusion?
Yes. It looks like there has to be some production in inquiring to the teacher. The Hokkyo Zanmai says, responding to the inquiring impulse. It looks to me like the inquiring impulse, I guess as soon as we call it something, then we're formulating it, and it's in the illusion. But where does that come from? I think I'm still looking at what is that inquiring impulse, and what makes it useful, or if we bring awareness to that, or what is it about that situation of responding to an inquiring impulse that shows us our mind and shows us the awareness and shows us what is arising. All the teachers use or have had students ask questions, or at least the ones I'm familiar with. So what is it about that responding to the inquiring impulse that shows us our mind or helps us train our mind? Jishin?
Jishin, what strikes me in this inquiry is that this is not about the inquiring impulse, but about the response, that the meaning is in the response. So I'm wondering, what is the meaning of the response? Bowing.
Just the meaning. If we take that meaning and we start to produce or develop walls around that in our mind, or reference points, that somehow the meaning can be used over and over again, then it seems we're leaving the meaning for what we think about it.
Can we feel that meaning? Can we feel that response? Bowing.
I think we could talk about it that way. But again, if we label that feeling as in a particular way or start to do something with it, it feels like we're leaving that feeling meaning.
This is the frustration of that inquiry, that wherever we go, there is always the response, oh, we label, we use words, and we are killing what is there. Thank you.
Yes, I want it, I like it, I want more of it. Where do I go to get it? I got the meaning now. What do I do with it? How do I share it? How do I capture it? Yeah, I see myself doing that. But we're encouraged to continue. Just keep looking. Kandroma.
Kandroma bowing. How does Sokuzan's teaching, you don't need to understand, you just need to study, fit into this?
Sokuzan had to leave for a minute. And Kandroma also left, but she asks, what is it? Or I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly, but what I understood her to ask is when Sokuzan says you don't need to understand. And I'm going to take it into the kind of, or maybe here she comes back, I'll have her ask it again.
And you think I'm gonna remember my question? Oh, how does the teaching of, you don't need to understand fit into this? Or responding to the inquiring impulse. But yet you don't need to understand. Bowing.
When we want to understand, we're looking, well, conventionally, relatively, understanding locks us into that understanding or starts to narrow down the inquiry. And not understanding, the thing that shows up for me too is failure. Because if we don't understand, and if we do understand, there's a kind of failure happening in that we're turning to the relative and looking for answers and some kind of completeness. Wanting to know and be the one who knows. It looks like we're turning to our personhood in understanding. I'm the one who understands. And that awareness or looking at what it means to see the open dimension of being, if we're understanding or relying on something we understand, it looks like turning away from inquiry and that natural curiosity, I guess I would say, that initially showed up.
Kandroma bowing. We talked about this a little bit at noon today with Dogen about how the thinking, analyzing while you're hearing a Dharma talk. How is that receiving? Bowing.
If you are listening to a Dharma talk or anything, I don't think you can, that we can take it all in regardless. of how well we're listening, because I think we're then judging our listening and analyzing. And so when we're pulling in, one person may hear a certain part of the talk and another person may remember it completely differently. So looking at that and how the analysis that we're doing is our analysis, and what's being said may be in that analysis, but it also could be everything else that's happening and in the room. And by pulling on a particular area of that for ourselves may need to happen, but we're likely missing a lot also. But I wasn't in the book study, so I'm not exactly sure where that was going.
Kind of about, it's like, responding to the inquiring impulse. The you use the word production, and yet we're in some ways receiving the inquiring impulse, and maybe even receiving the question, and then we're receiving the answer. Do you see that as all? I mean, even though you use the word production, could it also be receiving on all counts, Valerie?
Yes. And I think that, how would you know if it's producing or receiving, if that kind of back and forth or dance is happening between the teaching or the teacher and students, then that's it. And even if it looks like it's ill-formed, as we were kind of talking about earlier, or out of context, or too elaborate, or anything you can say about it, anytime we go to any of that, then we're kind of leaving what actually occurred. And it's very easy to do without even thinking about it. Jishin?
Jishin bowing. Maybe what you are just talking about now is related to Yunkai question. She asked, is that searching, looking for attributed to the next line, move, and you are trapped? Bowing.
Yes. Move and you are trapped, miss and you fall into doubt and vacillation. Turning away and touching are both wrong, for it is like a massive fire. Yeah. Then you get all the stuff you can do with it. But again, all of that is to look at. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at how we do that, how we move and we're trapped and we miss and we fall into doubt and vacillation. Turning away and touching are both wrong. For it's like a massive fire. Just to depict it in literary form is to stain it with defilement. So yeah, we can do a lot to the words and grab meaning from them. And not that we shouldn't, the inquiring impulse is there. So if we are grasping words and meanings, then that's what we're doing. And we can look at that and kind of like Sokuzan was saying this evening, if that happens and there's a response, is that response wrong? No, it's what showed up. So there's no way to know. What looks like it's vacillation or turning away in, or grasping, we can't know, especially if we're observing that in another person asking a question and the teacher receiving that and responding. There's no way to know. All we can do is look at how we respond to that. James?
James Bowen. If all responses are equally good, why bother thinking of any response at all? Why not just yell?
That may happen. That has happened. And also the response could be silence. So any of that could show up. But why have any response at all? If the question is asked, can there be no response? If nothing is said, isn't that also a response? I can take it right down a rabbit hole and just, build that up into something, but I think it's just the awareness, as Sokuzan often says, it's all about the awareness of what's happening.
We have a question in the chat.
Please, you could read that for me, James. Thank you.
From Myoka. Is that searching or looking for attributed to the next line? Move and you are trapped. So that was the question.
Thank
They
you.
asked.
Yeah, I sort of responded to that previously, but move and you are trapped, miss and you fall into doubt and vacillation. I think that starts to get into what we do with a response, or it can be. And it's just showing us our mind, showing us what we do with that. So I think it does follow the line I picked. So showing us the way we do that. Because moving is move and you are trapped. Miss and you fall into doubt and vacillation. So anything we're doing with it, anything we're doing with the impulse or the inquiry and the response can lead us into that trap. And we're encouraged to look at that, not to stop the trap. Mahesh?
Mahesh Bowing. So when there is a disagreement with the others, and the ego doesn't want to do it the other's way, how do we work with it? Bowing.
We could look at the not wanting and yeah, anything could come out of that situation. We may, I think of in a workplace, we may think we have a better way of doing things than someone else we work with. But we can't really see all the causes and conditions that go into how we're thinking about something or how they're thinking about a project or just a simple task. And I think the situation may tell us whether we need to, out of urgency or something else that may tell us that we need to do something about that. Otherwise, we may not need to do anything or just observe that situation or that wanting to know that we know something somebody else doesn't. Go ahead, Mahesh.
Mahesh bowing. So those disagreements are usually trivial, but then the other person insisting them to be done their way, and when I end up doing it their way, I end up my ego is hurt, and then I end up like yeah, angry at that later on. So um, yeah, so it's recommended to try to do it the other way as a practice, but yeah, that's where the question stems from. Bowing.
Yes.
How do I deal with the emotion after, or how do I, yeah, deal with that whole situation? Bowing.
It sounds like you're really looking at all of that and looking at those emotions and everything that shows up with that situation. That's the practice as I understand it. Yeah, I often have that also where there's been a disagreement and somebody, may there may be ill feelings or ill will, but I think if that's mine, whatever I'm feeling, that's mine to look at and to respond to the other person, maybe to not respond at all or to leave the situation, or if you can't leave the situation, to just look at that situation and see and receive what's happening with you and receive what's happening with them. Or see how you can't. Thank you for your questions this evening. I think we will close and we'll stand and dedicate the merit.